bouquets and gifts. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com, enter the code HERD, H-E-R-D. Let's go to Minneapolis via the Coward Global Satellite Network. My man, Greg Cosell. This is my favorite Greg Cosell visit of the year because this is Super Bowl week, and I know nobody has watched more film than you have. 37 years at NFL film. So let's just get to it. The Patriots have never scored in the first quarter of a Super Bowl. I think that's largely coincidental. I don't take a ton from it, but I do think Philadelphia's defense has to be loosened up a little. It's pretty intense. It's going to come out guns blazing. What could Brady do to loosen up that Eagle defense, Greg?
Well, Colin, I think there's a number of factors here. I think one of the things you'll see, and it may start early, is the use of the no-huddle tempo, because that Eagles defense is built on a front four that has a 7- and 8-man rotation, and that's critical because really, with the exception of Fletcher Cox, no one particular defensive lineman plays a lot of snaps, and that's the way the Eagles are built. So I think you'll see no huddle. Now, whether they start out the game with it or whether it's something they pick up on their second or third series, but I think that's absolutely critical. The other thing I think you'll see, I don't think there's a more patient quarterback in the NFL than Brady. And what you'll see from the Eagles, they play a lot of cover 3, which is the zone version of single high safety, but their corners never press. They play 8-9 yards off the ball. What I think you'll see Brady do, he'll throw those 6-7 yard hitches. He'll take that all day long, and then he'll make the Eagles' corners start to clue and key those short routes, and maybe then they'll get that double move over the top. But I think you'll see those two things from the Patriots offense.
Story this week, Steve Spagnuolo, Patriots knew our signals. My pushback on that was there's a reason coaches put their, paper, their play sheet over their mouth. Everybody's stealing everything in baseball, NASCAR.
Right.
I didn't make much of the story. What'd you make of it?
Not much. I think, to be honest with you, Colin, I think at this point in the season, in particular, when teams have 2 weeks to prepare and they bring in all their scouts, all their personnel people to do film evaluation and study the opponent, I think they're pretty certain from a probability and tendency standpoint what the other team is doing.
Let's talk about Gronk. Now, here's what I know about the Patriots. Last year, Chris Hogan had a huge AFC championship, didn't do much in the Super Bowl. They always keep you guessing, running back styles. But I do believe this. They will, at some point in a red zone situation, they'll look to Gronk. That part I know they will because I do believe he's a tough matchup. How tough is he? How do the Eagles combat Gronk in the 10-yard space there?
Well, the red zone is critical in this game. No team got in the red zone this year more than the Patriots, and they had a high TD efficiency. It's all a function, Colin, of where Gronk lines up. The Eagles have not shown a tendency to double team very often in the red zone. They play a lot of cover 1, it's man-to-man, or they're big on playing zero blitz, meaning they attack the quarterback with no free player, no free safety. So I think it's a function of where Gronk lines up. If he lines up tight to the formation, you could see a double just because the formation allows it. But they also like to split him out wide, and then I think you get the one-on-one matchup, and they like to throw the fade ball.
People will talk Gronk. I think Zach Ertz is an underrated player. I remember the year he was drafted. I watched him play at Stanford, and I said at the time, this is a real player. Now, I think he'll be a factor in this game. If Philly gets into the red zone, what do you think Belichick will do with the Eagles tight end?
Well, unlike Jim Schwartz, Belichick has a history of doing dedicated doubles on 1 or 2 receivers in the red zone he feels are the most dangerous. And I really believe if that happens, you'll see Bill Belichick double Zach Ertz and Alshon Jeffrey. It's something I've seen him do on film all through the years. He does that a lot. I also think on third down in the regular part of the field, you'll see him at times double Zach Ertz.
People are going to talk about Nick Foles. I think the running game is going to be crucial for Philadelphia because I think Doug Peterson thinks to himself, I don't want to rely on Nick Foles. I'd love to have him throw on 3rd and 3, not 3rd and 9. The Philadelphia running game, how does it match up with Belichick's defense?
The Eagles have as multiple a run game as any team in the league. And the thing is, they use different runs with different backs. If Blunt's in the game, they use specific runs. Ajayi pretty much is their runner who does everything. But they like to get the ball on the perimeter in the run game. And one thing I think you'll see, they like to get Jason Kelce out pulling. I think you'll see the Patriots try to take that away by how they align their fronts. I think what they'll do, and I think this will be clear, is they like to line up in what we call reduced or bare fronts, where they have a defensive lineman cover both offensive guards and the offensive center. That makes it very difficult to pull your offensive center.
Greg Cosell, 37 years NFL films. Listen, in sports, people overreact to the last game. And by the way, Minnesota is the 6th straight team that's won a playoff game in walk-off fashion and then lost the next week and been blown out. So I don't take a ton from the Minnesota game. I look more at the Atlanta-Philadelphia game. That game situationally will be like this game, which I think is close. So Nick Foles, I'm not looking at that Minnesota game going, that's the new Nick Foles. I think he's a nice player with limitations. Does he do anything that could give New England trouble?
Well, that game against Minnesota was out of character for Nick Foles, but I think the Eagles would be looking for efficiency. They want Nick Foles to execute their offense. They'll use a lot of RPOs, which the Patriots had some trouble with against Jacksonville, and that's the way they'll want Nick to play, to be an orchestrator. He's not really a late-in-the-down quarterback. He's not an outside-of-structure player. He did these things against Minnesota. That's not the way he's played his whole career. So Nick Foles, as a particular player, as an individual, doesn't really present specific problems. It's more the nature, the structural nature of the Eagles' pass game that they'd be more concerned about.
Okay, let's go to what Brady's going to be looking at with that Eagles secondary, Greg. I think it's good. I don't think it's spectacular. They have one high-end corner. How would you judge it, the Philadelphia secondary overall?
I think it's played a lot better, Colin, than people think. They have two good safeties. Malcolm Jenkins is as versatile as any in the league. Their corners have not gotten a ton of credit all year because they're not a high percentage man-to-man defense. They're not a shutdown defense. They don't flop their corners. They don't match up. They play each corner on one side, and that's the way they play. So I think that they've not gotten a ton of credit. Mills will play left corner. Darby will play right corner, and they'll just play. And it's a lot of zone. But I think they played a lot better than they're given credit for.
Now, I do think Fletcher Cox, after Tom Brady, is the best player in this game. The three best players to me are Brady, Fletcher Cox, and Gronk.
Okay.
That's just my interpretation. There's a lot of good players. I think Fletcher, he's not Aaron Donald, but boy, he's good. He moves people. Your takeaway on what he does that could be problematic for New England?
Well, now we get down situationally because I think Cox is a really good run player. He'll line up primarily at the three technique defensive tackle position. He's really a penetrating type player. Where the Eagles do cause problems is when they line up in their sub-package defensive line, where they bring Brandon Graham inside and you have Cox and Graham inside, and that can pose problems depending how the Patriots choose to protect. Because Joe Thuney, their left guard, has struggled at times throughout this season in one-on-one pass protection.
Yes, he has, Greg. By the way, again, it's just my interpretation. Brady, Fletcher Cox, Gronk. Is there a player in this game, like Malcolm Jenkins? He's obviously a very good player. Does New England have a player to you that doesn't get credit that you really do think's an elite player that we don't talk about much for New England?
I wouldn't say elite, but I think a very overlooked player for New England, particularly on their defense, is Patrick Chung. Yeah. He is asked to do an awful lot. He matches up man-to-man on tight ends, and they play a lot of man coverage. So he's going to match up a lot on Zach Ertz. That's a big matchup in this game. But he is asked to do a lot. He has a lot of responsibilities, and he plays man-to-man coverage a lot better than people probably think. Patrick Chung is a very overlooked but very good player.
Good stuff, Greg. Great talking to you.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate it.
You bet. I actually have a little Patrick Chung story. I covered Oregon for my Oregon friends when they recruited him, and there was the story that was relayed to me is they found him on the recruiting trail, and they didn't want him to commit early because they were like, this kid's incredible, and if he commits to us, other schools will pursue him, and we think we have a chance to get him. So Oregon, he committed very late to Oregon. Like the day of, it's like, who's Patrick Chung? He came in as a freshman on a good Oregon team and was their best athlete. I can remember seeing him and talking to Mike Bellotti. I'm like, who is that? And he's like, yeah, we didn't want to give the world. We thought we kind of stole him. Something happened in high school where either he played in the league nobody watched, but his first day at Oregon, he was